What's up, guys? I'm Alex Duran. Thanks for tuning in to Corrections Unlocked. On today's episode, we're going to discuss the most violent inmate in a prison. 10 years ago, I would have told you it'd be our Aryan Brotherhood, our AME, our Bloods, and our Crips. Those are our most feared. Those are our most respected. But our most violent inmates, the ones that are constantly battering staff and assaulting staff, they're going to be our mentally challenged inmates, our mental health inmates. Here in California, we call them EOP inmates, Enhanced Outpatient Program. These are the inmates that are taking psych medication, that have a lower TAB score, that need assistance, that need help with mental health issues. These are the ones that are very unpredictable, and these are the ones that are going to be battering you or your partners. So we need to know how to deal with them and how to talk to them. If you're a newer officer, you're going to be put into these buildings because that's the place nobody wants to work. The first area I bid into as an officer was an EOP building. The first yard I bid on as a new sergeant was a level 4 EOP building or yard. I have a little bit of experience with these inmates, but I wanted to give you some tips on how to be able to approach these inmates and how to talk to them and how to be able to see who's actually real and who's actually fake. Because this is going to be a good majority of the inmates that are going to be coming in and only going to be growing, in my opinion. So if you're working in an EOP building or dealing with a mental health challenged inmate, one, if they approach you and try to talk to you, always talk to them in a very calm manner. Always try to talk slower so that way they can understand you as best as they can. If you feel like they're not understanding you or they might be getting confrontational with you, try to understand he's probably a little bit slower and he's just getting frustrated because there's a lot of inmates watching him. So I usually try to pull him into my office area or try to listen to what he's saying. But out of a whole building, you're going to have about 10 to 15 inmates, in my opinion, that are actually struggling with these mental health issues very severely. So those are the inmates. I'm going to take their numbers down, their names, and I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm going to look at their disciplinary action to see how they batter staff, because I want to know if they kick staff, if they hit staff, if they bite staff. If I look up a battery on an officer, what that inmate did last time, 9 out of 10 times he's going to do it the exact same way. Muscle memory, that's usually what they do. So if he socked an officer in the face, that's probably what he's going to do again. So I'm cognitive of that when I approach him in his hand placement. But I try to collaborate with mental health. I try to collaborate with medical so I can see his behavior, so I can see what he's suffering from, so I can understand he's taking certain medication and what times he's supposed to take it, so that way I know what he has coming and when he's supposed to be getting these type of things. But when you talk to them, you need to understand he might be slower, and I need to be able to listen a little bit better. Understand what he might need help with, because as an officer, I need to make sure I'm providing help and assistance with these type of inmates. But the other majority of the inmates in the building, in my opinion, the ones that are manipulating the system, you need to be able to watch them and be able to read them, because these are the ones that are going to be causing issues or going to be trying to manipulate or extort those type of inmates. And once they see that you have a rapport with your inmates that are actually struggling and you're actually helping them out and checking up on them, they're going to back off a little bit, because they're going to know they have limits when you're working that building, because they're going to know you're watching everything. But if you have an inmate struggling with mental health issues in your building, try to see who's approaching him, try to see which inmates are talking to him. So that way you have an understanding if these inmates are trying to punk him, or if they're trying to extort him, so they can be cognitive that you understand that. So if you see one of these inmates go into that inmate's cell or vice versa, guess what? That's the next cell I'm going to search the next day, so I can see if he's extorting him, if he's punking him for something, because that's the kind of stuff that's going to cause a lot more issues for you in your building. But if you're working with a more violent EOP inmates, your level 4 kind of administrative segregation or restricted housing unit is what we call now, be very careful when approaching these inmates in their cell, because they're very unpredictable. And the reason why I bring that up is if you're approaching one of these inmates' cell, you're usually escorting a medical staff or a mental health staff. It's your job as an officer to make sure that that staff member is safe, to make sure you're safe. So don't be lazy when opening up a food port. Don't be lazy with not looking into a cell, making sure the inmate has his light on and you can see his hands and he's ready to go and he's properly dressed or whatever. It's your job to provide safety and security for that staff. So do not be lazy with doing that. I see that all the time, and it makes you look weak. It makes you look like you don't know what you're doing as an officer, when ultimately all you're there to do is provide safety and security. So for those 5, 10, 15 minutes, you have to escort a staff. Be on your A game. And remember, there's cameras everywhere watching you. So you need to make sure you're at your best potential when you're doing these type of situations. But if you're working a building with these inmates, you need to understand these inmates' pattern, and you need to understand where they need assistance so you can assist them as best you can. And understanding these type of inmates, it's going to give them some type of trust in you to talk to you, to relay information to you, to not act out as they normally probably would. And when you see one of these inmates act out and he's actually struggling with mental health issues, don't be afraid to call for help. Maybe he needs to go talk to a mental health staff. Maybe he didn't take his medication, or maybe he was late on something. Try to talk to the inmate and de-escalate the situation as best you can. Because if you try to give him the cold shoulder or just kind of shine it off, you got to understand these are the type of inmates that are going to just punch you right in your face or take off on somebody for no reason. And it's usually going to take a couple of officers to try to detain that inmate. When you're writing these inmates up, you got to put a lot more work into it than you would a regular inmate. You need to be able to explain and articulate that inmate understood everything he was doing. So how do you do that? Just read reports. There's nothing that already hasn't been written or done in a prison setting. So if I want to write an EOP inmate up, I need to look up his behavior pattern, the areas he's struggling in, and I'm going to clearly articulate that inmate understood he was out of bounds. I gave him a direct order to not go over there, and he shook his head left to right and said, "No, I'm not listening to you." Articulate everything in your report so that way when it gets reviewed by a supervisor and mental health puts their stamp on it, you're doing everything you can to explain, hey, this inmate understood what he was doing regardless of his issues he's struggling with. So that way your report can actually stick. And when you do 2 or 3 of these reports, guys, it becomes very easy and very simple. But you got to put the work in to generate a good report so that way you have a layout and a structure for these type of inmates. Don't get comfortable with them. Don't ever get comfortable with an EOP inmate. You can be 3, 4, 5 weeks in a building with no issues, and that one inmate that is really struggling gets popped out for chow, and all of a sudden he just has a bad day or bad morning, or maybe he had a bad night, and he comes out and needs to go do something, and you shine him off, and boom, you get hit right in the face. These are the type of inmates that are going to do that, so you need to be cognizant of that. So always make sure your hand placement is somewhere where you're able to protect yourself. Always make sure you have eyes on your partner, and let the medical staff in there know that you're watching them, that you're looking out for them, because they don't have no equipment on them like you do. So you need to make sure you're providing safety and security like you're supposed to be doing. So check in with them, ask them what's going on, ask them what time they're going to be doing their med rounds or whatever, so that way you have an understanding. Inmates approach you, hey, what are we doing pill call? Oh, they said in 20 minutes we're going to do it. Cool. All right, thanks. So just kind of get familiar with your layout, your program. Understand that it's not just you working these type of buildings. It's going to be medical and mental health, because everybody takes a play when you're dealing with these type of inmates. Don't get comfortable. Be cognizant of your hand placement and understand your program so you can assist these inmates as best you can. If you're working a regular area and you have an inmate acting out that is displaying this type of behavior, try to do what you can to understand if he's struggling with these type of issues, and maybe you can refer him to mental health to help him out. But if you're working a building with all of these type of inmates, it's going to be very frustrating. It's going to be very unorganized. So it's your job as an officer to not let stuff bother you, to not let shit get the best of you, to know which inmates are really struggling, know their behavior pattern, and know how they are and how they act. And that's going to be with you doing the work, doing the research, looking up their disciplinary action, their case factors, collaborating with medical and mental health to understand how to deal with these inmates as best you can. And that you can do all that as an officer right from your office, with collaborating just with your partner. You don't need a sergeant or a lieutenant or all these people to collaborate to do all this with. You can do it right then and there with you. You're the one working the building. You're the one running the show. So Do a little bit of homework so that way you have an understanding of what these inmates are capable of and how you can provide assistance with them. But just try to be professional when you're talking to them. If an inmate approaches you, don't give them the cold shoulder. Don't give them, yeah, man, whatever. These are not the type of inmates you want to do that with. If you want to do that with the regular inmate because that's how you are as an officer, which I highly don't recommend, fine. You'll figure that out with the more time you put in that's not how you talk to inmates. But with these type of inmates, if you do that with them, you're probably going to get hit in the face. You're probably going to get your partner hurt, or you're probably going to have a bunch of issues in the building that don't need to be going on. So just being professional, talking appropriately, listening, slowing words down, explaining stuff differently is going to save you a whole lot of issues as an officer. So that's what I recommend when working in an EOP building. It's very challenging regardless. So let me know how you guys do it. Maybe let me know how you guys deal with these type of inmates or de-escalated situations in the past. I appreciate you guys. If this is something that has helped you, I'd appreciate if you dropped a like. I'd appreciate if you subscribed to our YouTube channel. Thank you guys. I'm Alex Duran.